But I want you to think about a question as we get started this morning. Who are your close friends? I want you just to ponder on that and think about your own life. Who are your close friends? If you had an emergency situation going on in your life, if you had a situation where you needed prayer right then and there, who do you call? Who is that person? Who is that person that knows all about you, right? They know the good, the bad, and the ugly about you, and yet they're still your friends. They know all that about you. They care for you. They're your close friend. Who is that person that spurs you on to be more like Christ? Because that's what we're talking about here this morning. It's that godly role model, those godly friendships that at the end of the day, the Christian life is about being more and more like Christ, our sanctification. So who is that person that spurs you on? When you're around them, you are spurred on to be more like Christ. Some of you might be thinking, I know right now, I don't have that person. And here's why. If I had to boil it down to two things, just looking at men in Southern California, men in general, is one, we're too busy. Most of your excuses are, I'm too busy to invest in friendships. I'm too busy, and then also I have a private life. I don't want to share things with guys. I don't want them to know what I have. If anybody knows it, my wife knows it, and that's enough. And I'm here to tell you, your wife is not who we're talking about here. So if you're thinking, that's my friend, well, let's get beyond that lovey-dovey story this morning and say, I want you to have godly friendships of other men that spur you on to be more like Christ. Because here's what you all need to hear today. We all are inundated in this culture that is fast-paced. And the good thing to say to everybody when they ask you, how's everything going? It's busy, busy. That's what we want to say, busy. And that's almost become a champion thing that we throw out there. I'm busy, I'm so busy. But then we're too busy for friendships. And then we also have this thing called social media, where many of you, if you look at your social media, you probably have hundreds of friends. But they're not friends like the Bible talks about. They're not friends when we think about people that spur you on. They're not friends from a standpoint of you're going to call them in emergencies. They're more of acquaintances, right? You know them, you connected to them. If you ever wanted to reach out, it'd be good, but they're not somebody you would call in an emergency. They're not somebody that you would call to have you spurred on to be like Christ. And so we need to think about godly friendships, because one thing the Bible gives us throughout Scripture is examples of great friendships and how it spiritually benefits individuals that have those. I mean, you just think about Jesus and Peter, James, and John. Right? Jesus, of course, had many people that he was around, many disciples that were around him. But when he went to certain places, when he went to the Garden of Gethsemane, he had Peter, James, and John. Right? Peter, James, and John are there, right? They're always his closest friends, and so they have more intimate knowledge. Jesus has more intimate knowledge with that group than others. Think about Paul and Timothy, another one, right? Paul goes to the Philippian church and he says, hey, I'm going to send you Timothy. I have no one better that's going to care for your soul. Right? And so that tells us that there's some intimate knowledge there. He knows everything about Timothy. He knows the things that he's doing well in. He knows the things that he struggles in, because there's this transparency, there's this vulnerability, there's this friendship that they have. You go to who we're talking about today, David and Jonathan, right? You read 1 Samuel 18, 19, and 20, you just see the loyalty there, the protection there, how Jonathan speaks well of David, he says. Right? All of those things are important for us to have in order to have a fruitful Christian walk. And most of you are looking at it saying, I feel like I'm missing something. I feel like I'm not spurred on. It might just be that you don't have that brotherly affection, as Paul says in Romans 12:10. You don't have that brother, that good friend that you've invested with, that knows you, that can spur you on to get to that next point in your Christian walk, right? That next level to really, really start moving fast. And I want to challenge you all to be thinking about that. And if you don't have that person and you haven't made that investment, it's probably one of the best investments that you can make in your Christian life. But it's not going to be easy. It takes time. It takes sacrifice. It takes vulnerability. It takes you stripping away the pride of your life to say, hey, I'm too busy, or that person doesn't need to know that about me. If you want to grow to be more like Christ, you need godly friends. You need people that are going to spur you on to do that. And I'm glad to have these men up here share with you about the friendship that they have, meaning with one another up here, to talk about that and how it's helped them in their spiritual growth. And so I want to have them introduce themselves. We'll start down here with Ian Bear. But Ian, let's start with you and just give us quick, 45, 60 seconds about who you are, and then we'll go down to Nick and get all the way down here to Paul.
All right. Hey, guys. I'm Ian. Born and raised Orange County. Actually went to Dana Hills High School. My wife and I have been coming to Compass for, I think, 17 or 18 years at this point. I was saved in junior high. I would say that's when I realized that Christianity is not just going to church and saying the right things, but it's repentance and a relationship with God. I'm close friends with, I'd count myself good friends with all these guys here. Very close with Paul and with Chris. Ryan Cox was supposed to be up here today, but he crashed his bike and broke his hip this week, so he's at home.
We don't recommend doing that, but
yeah,
pray for him because he is recovering.
And my wife and I are leaders in Thrive. I served for the worship team when they were really desperate, and I ride with the Link Cycling guys back there.
All right, thanks, man. Nick, what about you? Tell us.
Good morning, gentlemen. Nick Barnett, born and raised also pretty much in Southern California. I did not grow up in the church and started coming to Compass in 2012 with my family and got saved shortly thereafter after hearing the gospel and never really understanding, as Ian mentioned, the repentance part. Thought there was an importance of believing in God and kind of ended there. Close friends again with all these guys here, super close with Chris and Andy and people like Joel Gumbayan, Kevin Williams, Ollie Winter. And we serve currently in True North in the high school ministry.
Awesome. Francisco.
Right on. I'm Chris Francisco. I was actually born in Florida, and I'm a Navy kid, so kind of traveled around the world. And then eventually my dad got stationed in Long Beach, and so we've been in the South Bay, Southern California area ever since then. Seasons of life when I got saved was when I was in college as a junior, after having a close friend share the gospel with me back in high school, which I put that off, ignored it, and eventually God got my attention. So that's when that happened. And close friends with all these guys on the table, in just different seasons of life. And so when I look at them, I see our memories and all the different things we're going through. And then where I serve in different capacities at the church, but currently my post is a small group leader at Men's Bible Study, and also from time to time in different venues leading worship. And again, like Ian was saying, he's like when they're more desperate, they come to me. After they pick Ian and he's not available, then they pick me. So that's how that goes.
Great. Andy Wade.
Yeah, morning, guys. Andy Wade, also born and raised in SoCal, grew up in Ventura County. My family and I have been coming here to Compass for about 16 years. Got saved here, so in my mid-30s. Took me a few years to for that message of repentance to kind of soak in. Friends with all these guys, Chris and Nick close, and Ian, and getting to know Paul better. And yeah, my wife and I, we both serve in the True North High School ministry.
And I'm Paul Kunzman, born in Florida, came to Southern California in the early 80s as a Marine, and fell in love with the mountains and mountain biking. And since there's none of those in Florida, I stayed. And as much as I want to leave and go back to that free state, I stay here because it's a rich ministry field, so I'll take that. I got saved about 11 years ago here at Compass by the grace of God and a good brother, friend, Ryan D'Amato, who shared the gospel with me and continued to pour into my life until he passed away. So just looking forward to seeing him again in eternity. As far as friends, I'm friends with a lot of guys at this table, but specifically, and Chris hit it pretty well, like we have different phases of our lives when guys become super close, but they're always going to be really good friends. So, I lean on Ian a lot, lean on Chris a lot, lean on a lot of my linked brothers, and just grateful for them. I serve as a first-year men's Bible study leader, which I'm blessed to do that. I serve as a gatekeeper and lead the Link Cycling Ministry. And we got 3 tables of guys out there that I love.
Excellent. So what we're going to do up here this morning is very similar to small group discussion. So if you're in small groups, then this will be familiar to you, as I just asked these guys a lot of the questions to speak about friendships and the impact that it's had in their life. If you're not in a small group, then here's a small group session for you, and I encourage you to get in a small group, because that is the starting phase of developing those friendships, is getting close with guys that you do life with, right? And you start to talk about real things with. But Paul, since we just finished with you, let me just kick off this first question with you, because obviously you spoke a little bit about Ryan D'Amato, but talk to us about how you've seen a close friendship, such as the one with Ryan, even in your salvation story. How has that helped you grow spiritually, keep you accountable, and how did that lead you to Christ by having a close friendship there?
Well, I knew Ryan probably 20 years ago, and then we had lost touch. And I was out on a run, he was out on a ride, and we reconnected, and through a number of meetings and just getting back together and kind of rekindling a friendship. He shared the gospel with me, and then we kind of fell apart again. But as we talk about different friends in different phases, when I really needed someone, when I was calling out to God as a non-Christian, he was the one guy who I thought of, and called him up, shared the gospel, and then that's my quick testimony. But then just having these guys pour into my life, right, brothers in Christ, Chris Francisco, who went on a lot of painstakingly slow runs with me, and just gave the rapid sanctification. But just I soon realized that I pretty much stink at leading my own life, and that once I had Christ in my life, then I had guys pouring into my life, and realized that, man, without brothers in Christ, without friends that I'm pouring into and they're pouring into me, I just wouldn't be able to make it.
Yeah. And then, Nick, I want to jump to you over here, because obviously you came to Compass. Didn't get involved right away. It took some friends that you had developed through playing basketball, and it really kick-started your spiritual journey. So talk a little bit about the importance of friendships for you, coming to the church and kind of being that guy that's like, I don't need any new friends, I don't need anybody. How did that impact your spiritual walk?
Yeah, I got a couple of things I can share on that. As I mentioned, started coming to Compass in 2012, around the March time frame. Coming, checking in, going to service, not really knowing anybody, not letting anybody know me. Get saved in July time frame. My wife got saved around the same time, and I don't know if anybody else has wives like mine, but she literally said, you need friends. You have nobody. And I was that guy that just felt like my wife is my best friend. I don't need anybody else. I'm super busy, got kids and jobs and all of that. So she signed me up for basketball. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I could sign myself up. I don't want to, but she signed me up. And that's kind of how I got exposed to just the different men in the church. And, you think about it, if we're brothers in Christ, we're all striving for the same goal. We all have the same stewardships, or if not, close to the same stewardships. We want to do those things well. And I always think of an example I like to share is, when we first started coming to Compass, we got plugged into Thrive. And there's specifically an accountability. When you're in a small group, you should have some accountability. And was going to accountability months and months and months. And I felt like we were all kind of talking about the same things over and over again. And they're all critically important. What's your time like in the Word? How's your prayer time? How are you leading your spouse? But it was literally maybe 6 months of doing the same stuff. And then finally, it wasn't me. It was another brother who came out with something that he was really struggling with. And then it was like the floodgates opened up. It was like that opening where we could start to share about the things that men really struggle with. And it was a light bulb moment at that time where I saw, okay, here's what, of course we're supposed to be sharing our, all our struggles with our wives, but here is something that men are equipped to help with. So I think that was a critical part.
Yeah, as we think about that, there's nothing new under the sun. And so obviously there's a lot of commonality with what guys struggle with. right? And sometimes we try to keep that all bottled up to say, oh, you know, I'm all holy and I have no issues and everything's all great. But all it takes is, like you said, one person being vulnerable to say, here's where I need prayer. And then before you know it, the floodgates open. But you don't have that unless you have that pride stripped away and that vulnerability to say, hey, I'm not perfect. Here's where I need brothers around me. This is not something my wife can help me out with. I need brothers around me to continue to help me spiritually grow and keep me accountable. Ian, what about you on that one? How have you seen close friendships help you spiritually grow and keep you accountable?
Well, I think an important part of that is choosing guys to be friends with who have that shared goal of becoming more Christ-like, of being sanctified. You know, if we're, you know, hanging out in bars with guys who don't know Christ and who are swearing, it's like, well, that's going to pull us in that direction. Whereas if I'm choosing people to invest my time with who are seeking God, who are spending time in the spiritual disciplines, who are, you know, talking about things that are, you know, upright and worthy, that's gonna rub off on me, and I want that. And by the same token, viewing our friendships not just as, well, what are you going to do for me? You know, how are you going to make my life better? But how can I be a spur in your side? How can I spur you on to that same growth? You know, choosing guys who have that same goal and that same, you know, common vision and working together for that, not just being a consumer in that relationship, but investing in it and thinking, okay, I got to up my game because I want Paul or Chris or whatever, I want their game to be elevated, so I better step up.
Yes, Proverbs 13:20 says, whoever walks with the wise becomes wise. And so that's a great point that you made, is being able to identify the right guys that you're going to be friends with, right? And that doesn't mean, hey, I want to find somebody that's just like me or that has the same personality as me or same likes and desires as me. It's somebody that's going to spur you on to be more like Christ, right? Our goal is to be more like Christ. Who is going to be that close friend of yours that is not going to be somebody that's going to, you know, make you do foolish things, but they're going to spur you on? It's important that we have that. But I want to talk about for a second scheduling that time to make that investment. So, Chris, let me start with you, because all of us in here, some way, shape, or form, can say, I'm too busy for friends, or I don't need a friend, right? And so you're a busy guy. You're out running hundreds of miles for God knows why you're doing that. I don't know.
I'm still trying to figure that out. I wish I had a friend that would tell me to stop.
No, well, it's not me. I'm not. I'll tell you to stop. I won't join you. That's a different level of friendship.
Some just say slow down.
So, yeah, or slow down, yeah. But let's talk about that for a little bit, because, again, we can easily say we're so busy that we don't have time to invest in friendships. How would you respond to that, just to say investing in friendships is probably the best thing you can do in regards to your walk?
Right. You know, yesterday I was on a
100-mile run. Okay, you
No.
didn't have to brag, dude.
It was actually a 200-mile run. Anyway, no, I was on a call with the family, and my wife's uncle passed away yesterday. So, and but we were on Facebook Live with the family, right? And you can see like what mattered at that moment, right? He wasn't looking at, oh well, I'm glad that I did all this other work, or I attained all these possessions. He's surrounded by the people he loved, right? Whether that was electronically or in person. And I think that's, if you're trying to look ahead and think about what's important, it's going to be the people. It's going to be the names. It's going to be the people that you love, that you want to be surrounded with. So if we're really trying to look forward and think about investment and long term, then we ought to invest in that, you know. And God wants us to be in those relationships. And so that's something that, if that really is that important, then we would make time for it, right?
Andy, what about you? You're busy. You're working. I'm too busy. How would you counsel somebody that says that about friendships?
Yeah, for sure. And that's kind of an easy one for us to say, right? Like, I work, 60 hours a week, and I've got kids, and I've got this, and I've got that. But I think if you actually take an honest look at your schedule, you're going to find a lot of me time in there. And so what can I be doing with that time, right? And it kind of bleeds back into the first question. right? On how your friends are kind of pulling, growing you, and you're growing by being with them. But like I look at somebody like Chris, who's working, he's running the 100 miles, he's a father of 4, and he's sacrificing his time to do stuff, right? And that's inspiring me to do the same thing. And so, I think if you actually take an honest look at that schedule and where you can fit that in, you're going to find a lot of that time can be spent elsewhere and pointing your friends and other people to God.
Yeah, can I just add into that?
Yeah.
I mean, I know you guys hear about that. You guys, it's the joke. I'm running all the time, but like, find ways to bring guys in on the things that you're doing, right? Like for me, it's not. I actually don't enjoy running by myself. So I need a lot of friends. I'm trying to recruit. This is what this is all about. I'm trying to get people to run with me. No, in all seriousness, it's like whatever we're doing, right? If you're gonna go work out, find someone to work out with. If you're gonna go run, you're gonna do that. If you're gonna go eat, find someone to eat with. Like, these are all opportunities for us to be able to take care of both of those things at the same time. So, yeah.
Yeah, and let's talk about this question for a little bit, because all of you have something in common, is sports and running and all of that. So what about the guy that doesn't necessarily want to go run with you, or they don't want to play basketball? It's like, none of those are my interests. How then would you say we should go about investing in those friendships? If we're not going out for hikes, we're not doing outdoor activities, what are other ways that you've seen, that you've done? Because it's not just through sports that you've invested in friendships. What are other ways besides that? Anyone?
I'll jump on that. Huevos rancheros, right, Chris? I mean, Molly's. And same thing with Ian, right? There's times that we do have these things in common, but we may not be able to ride or we may not be able to run because we're injured. But we have a set day, and maybe instead of going and riding or running, we go have breakfast, or do something else other than sport, right? Sport's not the only thing that has people with common interests. There's shooting and other things like that. So, but it's the crux of that question is you prioritize what's important to you, right? And if you're not prioritizing friendship, then friendships aren't important to you. But then again, you could say, show me your friends and I can tell you a bit about yourself. But if you don't have friends and you don't have a core group of friends, then I can tell you there's a bit of emptiness that's going on there, or things that you're internalizing that, quite frankly, you can internalize because it's just going to eat you apart.
What other ways do you think? Because, let me throw it out there, because a few of you serve in ministries together. So how have you seen serving in ministries together with your friends grow you spiritually and grow that brotherly affection between the two of you?
I mean, that's part of the blessing, right? Is if you're trying to find friends that you do life with, and if you're serving together, that's just a great resource. You're going to find people that you're running the race alongside. You're serving in the same ministry, and there's a lot of blessing in finding people that don't necessarily do the same things that you do. We all have strengths and weaknesses in different areas, and some of that's going to come out in those friendships that are a little bit different than you.
No, I was just going to add, right? If you don't know where to serve, there's always somewhere to serve, right? And you're like, oh, I can't lead a group of junior hires, or I can't lead a group of high schoolers. People need help moving, right? Do that. And you're going to, if you're in this room, you have a common thing with everybody else in this room already, right? Even if that common thing is, my wife made me come, right? So use that, put it out there, and, somebody will hook you up with somebody else that, you may have similar interests with.
Yeah, and again, none of this is necessarily easy or our natural bend on the surface, because you mentioned, Paul, going to breakfast, and I know that was one thing that I struggled with early on, is like, what are we going to talk about? Like, what do you want to do? You want to go to breakfast and eat, and like, is this a business conversation or what? And that was even my thinking early on, being a non-Christian, of like, what are we going to talk about? But as we did this in men's Bible study a couple weeks ago, it's just the power of sharing your testimony, sharing your story, sharing what God has done in your life. That opens up a huge door of who you are and where you're from and how God is working in your life. And you'd be amazed by the connections that you have just within the testimony and the avenues that it opens up with that. And so I would just say get beyond that, if you're uncomfortable with it or even the thought of like, I don't know what that's going to, get beyond that, right? And invest in those friendships. Many of the guys in here, men, work with other guys and would say, you know what, I got enough friends that are my worldly friends. I don't need new friends, if you will. Talk to us a little bit about the disadvantage of just relying on, the guys that you grew up with and just saying, those are my friends. I don't necessarily need to invest in new friends within the church. Where have you seen, how can you talk about that being a disadvantage when we just solely rely on believing friends or friends that aren't headed in the right direction as us spiritually?
Well, last night I got a text from one of my buddies that I met in 5th grade. Literally, when I got here to the U.S., this is one of the guys that was in my 5th grade class. And so I gave him a call and we were chatting, and he's a non-believer, lives up in L.A. He's in the party scene, and he's all about the drinking and the drugs and all this stuff. And I'm talking with him, and just trying to catch up. And I was thinking to myself, wow, like after all these years, like this is, like he has my back. I know if something happened to me, he would be there to, help out and all that. But I just started thinking about his language and all these things, and everybody speaks differently, but if that's what I'm immersed in and that's what I'm surrounded by, that's who I'm gonna become. And it's just like, I'm just listening to him like, like, wow, just the way he's talking, the things that he's talking about and the things that are important to him. And I'm just like, wow, he needs Christ. Like, that's what I was thinking about in this conversation. And then you contrast that with other friends that I'm in, whether it's in the men's Bible study or people I serve with or just my other friends that know Christ, that we're running the race together, we're all following after God. It's like, I know I'm going to share eternity with this person. Like, that's just different versus somebody else who's a friend. We can hang out, but there's a limit to that. And I can see that if I was stayed in that place, it would pull me down. And I don't know, it was just a good reminder to me. I mean, that's what God wanted me to have, that just to be able to contrast those type of conversations.
Yeah, and even in that, before I take another one on that, is it's not about just saying, hey, okay, all my friends, they have to be believers and I'm not allowed to connect with other ones. Because, again, we wouldn't be doing what our mission is, right? And to go share the gospel, right? We want to make disciples. And so there's an idea of, yeah, should you have worldly friends? Yeah, absolutely. With the goal of seeing them saved, right? The reason that we're connecting with them, the reason we're hanging out with them is because we want them to hear truth. We want them to hear the gospel. Right, we're called to be in the world, but not of the world. And so when you think about, again, that image of Jesus and Peter, James, and John, right, there's that connection with those close friends, those ones that are spurring you on. And then there's a lot of other acquaintances that you will have. So we're not saying shield out everybody, but those ones that you draw in the closest, the ones that you invest in the most, those should be the ones that spur you on to be more like Christ. But you should be connected with some others as well, with the goal of seeing them being saved there. So, yeah, what else on that as far as just focusing only on, business relationships or business friendships?
Just something quick to add. Yeah, 100%. We have jobs. We're in the world. We have neighbors that are unsaved. We need to have those friendships and develop those with a specific goal in mind. But I can remember a few years back, I don't have, on my side of the family, I don't have any other Christians. My wife has a few, but even I remember a few years ago in our family planning, we're doing our trust and our will and starting to think about custodial, of our kids. If something, God forbid, happened to us, who's going to take over our kids? And it was a really tough decision as we talked through that to think of, okay, do we have family members that we would entrust? And 100% we have family members that I know love our kids, that would do everything in their power to take care of them. But it really came down to, how does God get the most glory in all the decisions that we make? And for us, we chose, brothers and sisters in Christ to fill that role. That might be extreme for some people, but it was important for us to consider who is going to continue to raise our kids and instruct them, in the Lord, and to teach them and, to help them in that facet. So that's kind of, where we take those relationships. And, we continue to pray, obviously, our family members and friends, and, that's the goal in mind. But that was something that was important to us as an example.
Yeah, and I know I joked about it at the outset, and I wasn't joking, I was serious. But as far as, because I'm sure there's some guys out there right now that the person that knows them, and the only person that really knows them, is their spouse. So what is the disadvantage of saying, my spouse is the only person that really knows me? Let's talk about that for a little bit. As men, as brothers in Christ, why can't it just be my spouse is the one that knows me?
Well, I can kind of talk on that a little bit here, and not just from my wife not being able to be my best friend, but my wife is also not saved. And, we live on very different realms. I don't want to say realms of morality because that paints her in a bad picture, but we live for perfection, and we have that perfection through Christ. But I couldn't share with her, Jesus says, if you have lust in your heart, you're committing adultery. Or if you're taking, and I take that to the next level of, if I take a second look at some woman in yoga pants and Starbucks line, I committed adultery. But how could I share that with my wife and say, honey, I committed adultery today? She would just come unglued. But I could certainly reach out to Ian and say, hey, bro, I'm struggling with these lustful thoughts, or I took second, third look, or I clicked two deep pages, or let me rephrase that, a couple pages too deep, just following Fox News to images that I might have stared at a little bit too long, and say, hey, bro, I need you to hold me accountable. I certainly couldn't do that with my wife.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Another thing to consider with that is that, as husbands versus wives, we have different roles that we're supposed to fulfill in our family. So I think it's important to have those close Christian brothers who are in that role and pursuing that same role in a godly way. I think that they can speak into our lives and encourage us, and like Paul said, hold us accountable in ways that our wife probably can't. And certainly our wife should be among our deepest friendships and closest relationship, but there's something different with having close guy friends, what they're able to speak into our lives.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say the same thing, right? You have a different role than your wife does, and, I have a son and a daughter, right? Chris has 2 older sons, right? So he's been through and seen things that I'm probably seeing, right? Or something like that. I can't go to my wife with that. And the other thing, right, if you don't have, right, guys that you can go to, if you have like a disagreement or anything with your wife, where are you going? Right? I mean, seriously, if that's your only like friend, partner, somebody that you confide in, and your disagreement is with them, you don't have anything to bounce wisdom off of or gain wisdom from.
Yeah, and I think that's huge, that point you just bring up, because obviously our aim is towards reconciliation with that. So eventually we do go back. But if there's no accountability there to, get your mind back on Christ and the fact that we should be forgiving, the fact that we should be seeking reconciliation so we can love our wives as Christ loved the church, then you can linger on that, right? And you're not going to have somebody to help you through it because the person that you're counting on, there's a wedge between you at that moment. So yeah, I think that's excellent just in regards to just thinking through it can't be our wives. And biblically speaking, God has designed them for a different role in marriage. Can't be your accountability partner because you're putting her now in a situation where she's in a sense leading you as your accountability partner, telling you how and how you should be in Christ. That's not biblical, right? We don't want to go down that route, and so important to friendships there. But guys, just give us an example of just how you've seen your friendships, that investment, help you grow spiritually. Where's been an area you've had spiritual growth because of you being able to point it back to these friendships that you have with one another?
I think one of the the key parts in that, in spurring on that growth, is being transparent and opening up. You know, growth is specifically addressing those areas in our life that we don't have nailed perfect, right? But if we keep those to ourselves and just, I'm going to work on that. I'm going to work on that. I'm going to work on that. There's no impetus to change. Whereas if I'm on a run with Chris and I'm like, hey, dude, here's what's going on, like for real. You know, here's what I'm dealing with. Here's what I'm struggling with. Will you ask me about this next week? Number one, I know he will. And number two, I've just told him I'm going to accept what the scrutiny into my life. You know, I'm not going to, no, everything's cool. No, fine. What are you doing, man? Like, there's no way I would do that because I want that. I want that growth. And I know that as my brother, he wants that for me. So, I mean, that's such an important part of our relationships as guys, taking it from those casual, hey, man, how you doing? Yeah, good. Oh, yeah, everything's great, to, hey, how are you doing for real? Like, I mean, sometimes I'll just ask the question twice. Hey, how you doing? Good. All right. How are things going? You know, like get past that layer, because that's where the relationship happens.
I can think of one specific brother in this room. Mike Jacobs back there, and I've known him for several years. And I think part of it just connects to what Ian was talking about, being humble, right? Being humble, that you're ready to accept what someone is going to say. So I remember going to him and asking him what he thought about a certain situation that I was going through, something that was, you know, I could definitely feel some level of angst, some fear in that. And he says, Chris, can I ask you a question? I'm like, sure. And he says, is your fear based on a fear of God or a fear of man? I was like, ooh, I know the answer to that, but I don't want to, stop talking to me, you know. No, but it took a brother to actually ask me that question, where I go, wow, that really is just based on, I'm being held back by my fear of man. I'm not looking to God with this. I'm depending on myself. So it took him to do that. And he also said this one time when I was going to go on vacation. I go, oh, yeah, we're going to go on vacation. Yeah. And then he was like, oh, that's really cool. You know, he goes, so what do you plan to do for the Lord on your vacation? I was like, what? You know, like, why would you ask me something like that? But literally, it's a question like that that really has me thinking. It's like, is this my vacation? Or is this a vacation that God gave to me? And what exactly does God want me to do? Am I taking time off from the Lord on this vacation? And so a question like that really made me think, okay, well, what am I going to do for the Lord on this vacation? And all of a sudden, it's like, okay, who am I going to share the gospel with? You know, where are we going to go to church? You know, how are we going to be prayerful? How am I going to be intentional with my conversations with my kids? So a question like that from a brother, which, you know, it's just a question, but it's a question from someone who loves and cares about you, and you have to be ready to receive that.
But a question like that, that's not rooted in fun. You know, it's like the adolescent in us thinks like, oh, friendships, we're supposed to go out and do friendly, fun things, you know? But that's not a fun question. That's a real question, you know? That indicates depth of relationship. And again, just back to, you know, viewing our friendships as this two-way street of growth. In fact, I mean, look at Paul's T-shirt that he's wearing right now. It's a picture of a bike. It's an unequal sign, a picture of a wrench or a tool. Is that a tool, Paul? Tool. An unequal sign, and then a trophy. And that's one of our mottos for the Link Cycling ministry, because in a ministry that rides mountain bikes, riding mountain bikes is awesome. It's super fun, and that's why a lot of guys get drawn into it. Just so you know, there's a mountain bike ministry at Compass Bible Church, Link Cycling. You should come. We ride Saturday mornings.
Shameless plug.
Shameless plug. Lots of friendly people there. Anyway, but that shirt means our bike is to be used as a tool, not a trophy. It's not, hey, what am I going to do? How am I going to get awesome on my bike today? It's, I'm going to use this as a tool to build relationships, to have gospel conversations, to draw people into friendships and into the church. And I think that same mindset can be for absolutely anything. I know Chris uses runs. I mean, I've had you say, dude, I don't even care about the run. Like, let's just go hang out, you know. But viewing our friendships in that way, okay, this relationship is a tool for spiritual growth, and we're gonna have fun along the way. We're gonna laugh, we're gonna crash, we're gonna, do all the stuff that friends do on bikes or running, but viewing those relationships as a tool, not just for ourselves, but for the other person as well.
Yeah, that's good. And thinking about what you just said is what's the purpose of that friendship? I think that's important to identify. Just even why you're meeting that person for breakfast, why you're going to hang out with that person. Like, what is the purpose? And if the purpose is, like we're saying, to say, I want my brother to be more like Christ, and I want to spur them on, then yeah, those conversations sometimes they're not always fun. I know just a close friend of mine will always ask me, how are you loving your wife? I'm like, dude, okay. That's the first question you ask. And then it's not never like, hey, it's okay, or yeah, everything's good. That's just not an acceptable answer. It's like, no, let's talk about that. If I were to call her right now, what is she going to say? All right, well, let's talk. Because why? Because he cares more about my soul more so than my happiness, right? He wants me to be more holy than happy. And so some of those questions are, hey, we got to get beneath the surface. And I know this is something you've asked for prayer on before. I'm going to keep asking you that. And hey, it may not be as comfortable for me either, but I care more about your holiness than your happiness, far more. And so we can ask those questions. And then even a point you just made, Chris, in saying, what did you say again? No, I'm just kidding.
You're such a good friend.
I know. I listen so well.
Such a good listener.
But oftentimes when we get into these situations and circumstances, right, there's emotional investment into them. Like you just think about your marriage, right? A disagreement, there's emotional investment into them, right? That it's hard for you to see just with a clear view because you're biased towards whatever you think about the situation that you're in. So having a friend to be able to say, hey, what do you think about this? Wise counsel, Proverbs tells us, it's excellent to have because you have somebody that's looking at your situation, not emotionally invested into it, doesn't have a bias, but saying, okay, how can I just advise you to glorify Christ in this? That's all I'm looking for. I'm not trying to say you win or they win or whatever. I'm just trying to make you more like Christ. And so if you don't have that, then you're forced to say, hey, I'm going to do what I think is best while I'm emotionally invested in this situation, and you're going to tend to lean towards what feels right for you, as opposed to how do we make Christ win in these situations. So it's a great example of the fruit from having these friendships, having somebody close to you that you can reach out to. But many guys in here, and all of us went through it as well. There's challenges to investing in friends. Tell us some of those challenges that you went through personally when you thought about, all right, I want to keep meeting with this guy. I want to keep telling this guy things that I need prayer for. What are challenges that you face personally as you think about investing in friendships? Because it didn't just happen for you. You guys didn't just magically become friends and it was easy. So what are those challenges?
It's actually all easy. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I figured that.
No, it's actually difficult. I think we get in the way. I get in the way. Naturally, I'm introverted. I could just stay home and just not interact with people. And I think that's my natural bent. And for me, it took my wife to be like, okay, let's go hang out at such and such's house. I don't want to do that. I'm just speaking honestly with you. And then after that, you go over there and it's like, okay, well, what am I going to do with my time? Am I going to sulk here, as people are hanging out, or am I going to actually engage with people? And so being in that kind of context where you're around other people, you're asking them how they're doing, you're trying to be very intentional. Well, if I'm going to be here, might as well make the best of it, right? Let's ask some good questions, learn about people, and all of a sudden it's like, I actually, these are pretty cool people, And you end up developing those kind of relationships in those times. So I think being just intentional about something, I think we were talking about prioritizing. Paul was using the word earlier, but this prioritizing and then being intentional and then taking it into action. So taking the step, even if you don't feel like what it is, but if you believe that to be the priority, then actually do it. And God will bless those efforts.
Yeah, I think, are you willing to sacrifice for that friendship, right? You're going to have to sacrifice your time. You're going to have to sacrifice your pride, right? To be vulnerable and say, hey, this is what I'm struggling with, or this is what I'm challenged with. And like Chris said, I think if you poll everybody in here and say, are you an introvert or an extrovert? what are you going to, I mean, they're all going to say I'm an introvert, right? Or most of you, I know I would. So find a way, right? Maybe find somebody that's an extrovert that's going to carry that conversation for you. Or bring, open up your house, right? You're on your home turf, invite them in, right? That might be easier, and you sacrifice a little bit of time to prepare and clean up afterwards. But, that's one way to do it. But you have to be willing to kind of take that step and go for it.
What else? What are other challenges that you faced?
Yeah, Andy, you mentioned, sacrificing the time to do these things, to make time for friends. And, for busy men in the 21st century, yeah, our time is spoken for. Our schedules are full. So it is, I never say find time to do something. It's you got to make time. You got to push something else out. And there's tons of things that we don't need, the me time, the lazy time that can get pushed out really easily. But a lot of times, going and doing things, especially, living out those experiences with our friends, going on retreats and things like that. Yeah, it's taking time away from other good things, Every time I go for a ride with the Linked crew, it's like, okay, is this a good use of my time? I think it is because of the things that are going on, but it's not just, if it was just like, yeah, let's just go ride bikes and have fun, I think I would have a hard time justifying that, at least on a regular basis, over caring for my wife and spending time with my kids and stuff. So yeah, it is a sacrifice, but that doesn't mean it's bad. It just means we have to make sure that time is spent well and that it's worth it.
Yeah, I think one of the other challenges that we have is our own personal selfishness, right? And selfish for our time or our money or our fitness. I can think of a specific example. Riding bikes, right? And riding with somebody who would come to the Linked rides, and he was pretty slow. Actually, he was very slow, just a brand new cyclist. And my selfishness, that sometimes I'm not going to say who it is.
It was me.
But but I will say there were times when my selfishness, I'd see him show up, I'm like, oh boy, the ride's going to be really slow today, right? And here I'm not being ministry minded. And then when I made that shift to say, I'm going to hang back and I'm going to ride with this guy, and give up my Saturday fitness ride, and then realized after 2 or 3 weeks of doing that how much he poured into me spiritually, and how much I grew spiritually from hanging back and riding with him, and God blessing that. And I think that transcends all of our selfishness and all of our challenges. If we do it for the glory of God, to invest in another man's life, we will be blessed by that.
Just want to add something on that too. Pastor Keller will probably get to this in another question, but if you are a man who struggles with this, maybe you don't have those close friendships, and this is for the married guys, the women do a much, much better job at this than us, making friends, right? At least in my life it is. And if you are looking for a place to start with that, your wife's friends. Maybe, they're married and you guys could have dinner. That's a great place to start, because some of those friendships are the best if you're married and, the wives are best friends and the husbands could be best friends or close friends. Those are really, really, really great to start with.
Yeah, if you have a guy right now, and this for all of you, if there's a guy that is convicted that needs to have friends because it is a godly thing to do, to have these friendships, how would you advise them on what could be a first step to saying, hey, I want to make this step towards investing in a friendship? Maybe I don't have it right now, but what could I do today just to take away from here? What would you say?
Well, look around the room. There's a lot of godly-minded men in this room who go to this church, and we all need friendships. So, I forget who said it. There's so many areas to serve at our church. Just get involved with something, whether it's a ministry or a service opportunity. thinking back, there's been some times when, what was it? I think it was like flipping burgers for Thrive or in the food line at Thrive or something like that. And I don't count that my spiritual gifting by any means. You know, if someone was like, yeah, what are you good at? I'm not going to say cooking hot dogs, but it needed to be done. And I'm like, okay, cool. I can do that. But the guys that I met there, I mean, you're just standing there with a bunch of guys, you know, like handing out buns or turning dogs, you know, but you're talking the whole time and you're meeting these people. Like it's not hard when you take the opportunities to meet people. And then the advantage of being in, you know, in a church is you already have that shared goal, that shared faith. You already have something in common, you know, and then from there you can find out about family interests, things like that. And those are kind of secondary, but just take a step forward. You know, get involved, do something, you know, serve the church. That's a great way to just meet people and start friendships.
Yeah, and just, you know, when we think about just the context of this whole conversation of friends, right? And I know that we all have friends even outside the church, but kind of going back to a previous question, right? The importance of that. I've got 5 friends that I grew up with in Florida that I've known since 2nd grade. I mean, lifelong friends that are non-Christians, and you know they care about me while I'm here on this earth. But the guys I've met in the last 5 years and have gotten close to care about me eternally, and I think that's just an important distinction to make. Because, you know, we might say, well, I've got friends, I don't need to find friends, but we need godly friends. We need guys who, and not just friends who, you know, lift us up. We need friends who feel comfortable enough sticking their finger in our chest and saying, hey, bro, I think you're going down a wrong direction right now. And we need to talk about this. I mean, that's somebody who cares about you eternally versus someone who just, you know, makes sure that you have a good fishing trip, although I love a good fishing trip.
I don't.
I guess you can't be friends.
Hey, I went on a fishing trip. I didn't do anything, but I was there. I got a selfie with somebody.
It helps when you catch something.
Let me ask this one more question for all of you, but I'm sure there's been a time just with the friends that you've had that, you know, whether it be a spiritual a trial that you're going through or a challenge just in your life, something you needed to talk through or help through. Share with us a time where having a friend, a godly friend, was beneficial to helping you through a situation. So let's talk about specifically for you.
I could think of 2 examples. One was my wife really likes ping pong. And so we wanted to get our ping pong table. And so we bought one, and I was like, well, how am I going to get that thing home? You know, had no truck or anything like that. So I remember I was serving on the worship team one weekend, and I was, oh, what do you plan to do today? I was like, yeah, I bought this ping pong table. I don't know how I'm going to get that thing home, though. And he was like, I can help you. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, I have a truck. You know, I'll go take it. Like, after we're done serving here, I'll just tell me where to go, and I'll pick it up, and we'll bring it to your house. I'm like, really? Like, something that simple. Like, if you have a truck, you can make a lot of friends, right? Like, that's it. I have a truck. You can be my friend, right? Just reach out. But, I mean, that was like a simple, practical, I didn't even expect that. Like, I was just telling someone about it. Like that, and part of that is just engaging, and he stepped up to do that. I mean, that seems like a very simple thing. But it did require some sacrifice of his time and all that, but blessed us tremendously, and I'll never forget that. The other one was with my wife. She had an ectopic pregnancy, and for those that don't know what that is, it's when the pregnancy, where the embryo gets implanted in the fallopian tube. I'm not going to go through anatomy class right now, but essentially, we had to do an emergency surgery. It's literally, you know, there could be internal bleeding, and we need to get into this surgery. And so, as me and my wife, we go to the hospital, and she needs to have this procedure done. And I'm sitting there, and they're talking about the risks of this, like your wife may die, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, like this is like real. You know, they're going to potentially remove, you know, tubes and ovaries and all this. I'm like, oh my goodness. And I remember being in the waiting room, right, as my wife gets wheeled in there, and I get this phone call, and I'm like, I don't recognize this number. So I pick up, hey, it's John from the church. Like, hi, you know. And he was the small group leader of my son. And he says, you know, I just want to let you know that you don't understand the number of people right now that are praying for you. There's a whole network of people that are praying for you and your wife right now. And dude, I'm not an emotional person. I seriously just lost it in that room. And I was just tearing up, just thinking about the love that God has for me through the church. And he's just like, you know, whatever you need, what do you need? I'm like, I don't know, do you need me to pick up the kids? Do you need food? Do you need this? And so the procedure happens, and I don't even know John that well, but our commonality was in Christ. And so after, when we're in the waiting room at the hospital, the man knock on the door. He comes in with all these groceries. Here's some food. Here's some hot food. Da da da. You know, hey, do you need me to clean your house? Do you need me to wash your car? I'm like, wow, I really like this. I need to have these more often. No, but my wife's family was there, and it's like, who is that? And I'm like, I don't really even know him that well. Like, I mean, he's my son's small group leader at church. He's like, really? Like, I thought you'd known him for years. But really, that is, it doesn't necessarily have to be the long-built friends over time, per se, although that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about being a friend, right? If someone needs to move, it's like showing up for that person. And I know nobody was like, hey, I want to move, you know, but like when you do that, there's such a blessing in that. And so I've experienced that myself, someone helping me move, but I've been there, you know, helping other people move, and that's been an amazing thing. So I think it's just being there practically in the everyday life for people.
Yeah, that's great. Just even thinking about what that concept of almost flipping it on its head, of saying, instead of going to say, hey, how do I invest in friends? How do you just be a good friend to others that God has placed around you? Let's just start there. That's good. What else? Guys, give us one or two more as far as situations where it was beneficial for you to have that godly friendship to help you through whatever you're going through.
Yeah, I can certainly speak to that. I've experienced along the same lines of what Chris was describing. Starting in May of 2018, a lot of you guys may know I was diagnosed with a pretty nasty form of cancer, and there was a lot of uncertainty initially about prognosis and et cetera. But I remember getting on the phone just devastated with, I specifically remember with Paul. You were driving and you were in the car with your wife, I believe, and I was just kind of like, yeah, here's what's going on. And I remember calling Chris also at that point. And there's two things that I remembered. I remember Chris being very calm. And that was like, he was just like, all right, well, we're going to pray about this. You know, God's got a plan. We're going to pray through this, and I'll be praying for you. And he meant it. It wasn't just like, oh yeah, you know, I'll pray for you. Good luck, man. I just remember the calm that he had, and that was good for me, you know, stabilizing my ship as it was rocking in the storm. And I remember Paul, there was more to our conversation than this, but what I took from it was, bro, what do you need? What can I do for you? I'll literally do anything that you need right now. And I believed him. So just having, you know, anchor friendships like that, where, you know, guys that'll open their door in the middle of the night and give you what you need, who will stop what they're doing, and also, you know, are invested in praying for us and spurring us on. And then stemming from that, to Chris's point, our church is filled with people who are caring in this way, who are deeply caring for the people who are hurting and struggling in this church, along the prayer lines. I've had people come up that I don't even know, just say, hey, you don't know me, I'm so-and-so, just want you to know I've been praying for you and your family. It's like, what? My gosh, that's so, I mean, it's so inspiring, but it's convicting too, and that convicted me and showed me, like, this stuff counts, like being a friend, you know, not just receiving friendship, but being a friend to those, to our close friends, but also to our brothers and sisters in the church. It's so important. That's how this Christianity thing is supposed to be. We're bearing one another's burdens. We are celebrating each other's joys. But yeah, it's amazing and important.
I just want to add on to one thing that Ian was. I forgot his name. He's my good friend. But anyway, one of the things that I thought about when you said that, yes, I'm praying for you, but I'm watching you go through this trial, and for me, that's encouraging. Like, you don't necessarily think, oh, I'm going to be a blessing to him. I'm going to talk to him about my cancer. But like, literally, when that happened, all my problems got real small all of a sudden. It's like I'm dealing with some issues, but I'm hearing this guy going through this, and like, wow, what do I have to complain about? And so all of a sudden, I'm more grateful. I'm walking closer with the Lord because of now coming alongside you in this. And so the blessing goes both ways, even though in your mind you think that I'm serving you, but it's like you're serving me, like God is working through that. So just know it's a two-way street.
Yeah, I was going to say, so less than a year ago, right, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. And that called me back to a conversation I had with Ian shortly after he got his diagnosis, where his attitude was, how can I glorify God through this, right? And that was just impactful for me in that moment, right? Because, you want to feel sick. I'm a young guy, right? This is for old guys, whatever. These guys are looking at me like, no, you're old. But just like, how can I glorify God through this? And then to go to what Chris was saying, just the practical ways that people here that I'm looking at come alongside you, right? Day before surgery, we Zoom in, and these guys are praying for me with their families, right? Post-surgery, abdominal surgery, and can't sit up. And these two right here, Nick and Chris, along with others who went and got, a reclining chair and and I'm upstairs sleeping, and they come in and they install it, and it's down there when I come up and come downstairs, right? Or the meals that families that I'm looking at right now brought to my family. It's just, wow, it's awesome. Hard to describe well.
I was just say I got a couple examples too of God gives us these friendships, these people that pour into our lives are filled with wisdom, and I can think of examples where I was considering a job change, and I reached out to Andy because I want to make sure that I'm not lacking faith and being too timid and not willing to walk through that door that God is opening, possibly, and also making sure I'm not just financially motivated to do those things. That's what our brothers are there for, to bounce these ideas off, to have them bring you back to Scripture. And I can think of the ways that these friendships they go down to different levels too. I've had Chris's wife has taken one of my kids through Partners, and it's because of those friendships. And obviously she would do that for anybody, but it's a special love that you have for your friends, and you're willing to invest that time, and when we quote unquote don't have it. So those are just ways that the friendships just hit different levels.
And if I can, just point this to, John 13:35, by all this, people will know you are my disciples if you have love for one another. I think, pointing that to God, right? If we're called to be evangelists and disciples, right, how better can we represent Christ than to show our love for one another? Like, I know my wife has said to me on a number of occasions, I wish I had what you have in friendships. And because she sees the depth of my friendship with the guys from the Ling Cycling Ministry, with Ryan Cox and Ian, and the conversations that we have, they're deep. And she's got her earthly friends that are good people, but they don't invest like my brothers invest in me, and I get to invest in them. And that's a beautiful thing to share, not just with her, but with a lot of non-Christians around.
Yeah, and as we wrap it up, that's the purpose, again, that we're talking about. It's not just, hey, let's just go out and grab a few friends and get close with them. But when we think about our mission in being more like Christ and having a relationship that's centered on Christ, there was just examples all throughout what we just heard of, you just never know how God is going to work through that. You may be trying to bless someone else, and in turn, God is blessing you because of that, his centralness in your relationship and in your friendship that you have. And so just even sitting out, looking out here, I can imagine in a room this size that some of you are not believers, right? And you have to go back to the point of what's the purpose of all of this? Well, why are we here? Right, and I'm assuming because you're here that there's some form of you that says, hey, there is a God, that God has a purpose for my life, but it's understanding what that purpose is. And again, it gets back to the gospel. We have to start with, is there a God? Then we have to get to the point of what's God's purpose here. And God's purpose for all of us is to be perfect, to be holy as he is holy. Well, I don't know about you. Well, actually, I do know about you. You failed. All of us have, right? We've all fallen short of the glory of God. And so we all have a sin problem here that it needs perfection in order for us to dwell with the holy God. And that's why Jesus was sent, right? He was born of a virgin, born different than all of us. He lived a perfect life. He died on the cross. He resurrected from the grave. And he died on the cross and took the punishment for our sins, your sins, right? The sins that you have so that you can get his righteous life, and he takes our imperfect life. He took that on the cross, right? That's the gospel. And so once we get understanding of the gospel and say, I'm a sinner, I have a sin problem, we all do, I can't do it on my own, there's no amount of good that I can do, there's nothing, I failed that already. Once we realize that Jesus is what this life is all about, not my works, not anything that I've done, it's only Jesus, only by his grace that we can be saved. Then we say, all right, the whole point of this life is all pointed to Jesus. That's the point of it, because I can't do it on my own. I've already failed it. There's no way to make up for not being perfect. So once we realize that the whole point of this life is for us to glorify Jesus, for us to live for him, for us to repent from our sins and put our faith in him and live for him, then we say, okay, this whole life is about Jesus now. And if I have Christ, then I can have eternal life. That's the only way, right? I'm the way, the truth, the life. The only way you can come through the Father is through me, right? Jesus says that. So once we realize that's it, then it's about, all right, I need to get people around me that are going to keep pushing me towards Jesus, because the world is going to push me away from it. It's going to get me chasing sex, money, and power, and all of those things lead to death. They lead to death, right? At the end, they lead to death. You can have all the sex in the world, all the money in the world, all the power, and guess what? You still will die. And you got to face God on Judgment Day, and he's demanding perfection that you don't have. So if we understand that this life is about Jesus, and everything needs to be focused on Jesus, we need to get people around us that are going to help us be more like Jesus and less like ourselves. That's what we're talking about with this friendship. And I love Proverbs 18:24 says, a man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. A friend, right? You can have all the acquaintances, the companions, and you can say, hey, I got 1,000 Facebook friends and all that stuff. But how many friends do you have? How many people know you? How many people know the good that you can do, the gifts that God has given you? How many people know what sins you're struggling with? And they're willing to call you out, not just tell you what you want to hear. You got to have those friends, because we're all relational beings, right? Even you think about the Godhead, the Trinity. There's a relationship there, right? And we're made in the image of God. We're relational beings. We thrive with relationships. We thrive with friendships. So as I mentioned at the outset, some of you may be struggling in your walk right now as a believer because you're missing that component of saying, I need friends. I need brothers that are going to come beside me and hold me accountable and help spur me on. And I want that nothing more than for all of you. There's a book. Let me I'll show that book, Andy. So this book right here, it's so important. What's the name? Made for Friendship. I love that book. Yeah, it's a great book. I had all these guys read. We read it together. But it's in our bookstore now. I would tell you, pick that book up. It's great to read and to understand more of what we're talking about here. And there's a quote by J.C. Ryle. He said, friendships have our trials and they double our joys. They have our trials, right? When you're going through something, you got a brother that comes alongside of you, you seem to get through it a little bit quicker. When you got joy that you share with another brother or friend, then it doubles that joy. And I think that's so true and so profound that that's why we need friends more than acquaintances. And we need to start that now. one thing I pray for our men's ministry is that we would just be abound in brotherly affection, right? That Romans 12:10, brotherly affection for one another, that we would love one another, that we would be united, that there would be so many friendships and loyalty and just speaking highly of one another and holding each other accountable, all for God's glory. Because when the men of the church are strong, guess what? The church is strong. And so if we have that right, then the body of Christ here at Compass and even beyond will continue to be strong based on the men. So I want to challenge you all, if you don't have that friend that I started with, who is your friend? Who are you known by? Start that today. You got guys around your table. Guess what? It wasn't a coincidence that you just sat at that table and guys are around you. Get to know one of the guys before you run out of here. Spend 5-10 minutes. Just swap story, a testimony, tell them a little bit about yourself, swap numbers, get a breakfast, dates, not a date, but you know what I mean, whatever. Something on a schedule. Yeah, I've
Take
done well the
selfies
whole
together.
time. I was talking to, now I'm getting off topic. I was talking to my wife. I'm like, yeah, you know, it's great when guys have these physical activities together. And she goes, you shouldn't say that. I'm like, you're right. That was kind of weird. And I've been safe the whole morning until the date, but that's not a big deal. Anyway, that wasn't my point. My point is get connected with guys. Don't feel like, hey, I don't need that. That's not for me. If you're a believer and if you're not a believer, then I would say you need to think about your salvation today, because here's the news. You could get in a car wreck on the way home. Hope you don't, but 155,000 people die every single day. 155,000 people die. And I'd be willing to throw a number out there, probably 95% of them probably had plans for the rest of the day, plans for tomorrow, plans for next week, just like you and I. So don't let time go past where you're sitting here thinking, oh, I'll wait to give my life to Christ. Make sure you're right. Let today be the day of salvation for you. And then get friends around you that are going to help you be more like Christ and they're going to spur you on to live the Christian life as we ought to live. So before you run out of here, like I said, just spend time, please. It will be the best 5 minutes of your time that you can spend rather than racing to get home to go to a ball game or whatever it is. Just spend a few minutes connecting with the guys around the table, exchange contact info, and get to know them. And pray that God would bless that, and He will, because that's why we're designed, and it will help us grow to be more like Christ. Let me pray for you, and then I appreciate you all being here this morning. Love this time that we get together as men, and I pray that it would be fruitful and productive for you. So let me pray, but don't run out. I'll see you if you run out. Just sit for a few minutes and talk, and then you can leave. All right, let's pray. God, we thank you so much for how you have designed us. We thank you for your just almighty power, even what we were just talking about now. Lord, there's so much that you're doing that we can't even imagine. We can't even fathom. But when we are faithful to do the things that your word says, not trying to figure it out on our own, but doing what the Bible says, examples that we see in the Bible of friendships, of just being open and being honest and loyal to one another and helping each other, those things, Lord, we know you will bless those efforts. And so I pray for all of these men that they would walk away, and if they have great friendships, that they would excel still more, as Paul says to the First Thessalonians, or in First Thessalonians. I pray that they would do it even better, invest in those friendships better. If those men here that don't have friendships, Lord, give them an opportunity right now before they leave to open up a door that they can at least start making strides towards godly friendships. Be a great friend to one another. And Lord, I just pray that you would bless that, and they would look back on this today and say, this was the start of a great friendship because I made that effort today, and knowing that you will bless it. Lord, we want to be more like Christ. We're striving to do that. We know we need others around us. We need the church body. We need friends. And Lord, I pray that you would bless us by giving us those close relationships, and you would continue to strengthen us and strengthen your church. We thank you for all that you do and all that you've given us this morning. In Jesus' name, amen.